All right, so let's recap a little bit what we talked last class on Thursday. I show you the process of creating details and the process of building up reference details across the entire model. We focus on creating this foundation detail or a wall base detail, the exterior wall of the Mila house, and we're creating a typical detail that displayed how the connections work between the wall and the foundation. And I show you that this is a mix of elements that are coming from the model and elements that we top on top of the view to enhance the constructability representation of all the elements that are connected. And I show you, that a lot of the elements we put on top are just two-dimensional details that are pasted on top of the view. These are components that we load into the project and that they you can manipulate individually and tag using nodes, and then you can get a better looking detail by adding detail components. I'll also show you how to create a repeating detail, which basically expand your ability to array elements using a line-based family. A line-based family, it's a family that you can stretch in using one of those grid points. And we created one from scratch. And I show you that this profile was originally coming from an AutoCAD background, an AutoCAD profile. And it was brought into a detail item family. We trace it over using lines, we save it, we load the component, and then we duplicate a repeating detail so that you're able to create this type of array representations. And you can do the same throughout the project by creating to represent things like that repeat on a cadence, like ceiling joists or floor joists or wall joists, etc. We don't have to model all these elements in 3D. We just paste it on top as two-dimensional blocks. And the ability to create those custom detail items will save you a lot of time in creating. So it's a piece of kit, you just assemble it together and create detail like this.
Hey, Cesar, quick question. I'm in the working file that you had linked in the chat, and this file doesn't have any of that, like insulation and all the stuff we added last week.
Yeah, I think that was the 11.2 version, but we're not going to do anything about the detail anymore.
All right, cool.
But let's see, I'm going to make, if you want this file, I'll share it with you, but we're not going to do any details. But in any way, I'm going to post it on Google Drive with last week's folder.
Cool, thank you. If we don't need it, then I'll just keep working in this one. Thank you.
Yep, we don't going to need it today. So, but I'm going to share it anyway, so that there's a record for it. So Google Drive and Revit 2023, work in progress, new folder, and 11.03. And this has the model with the right detail. Yeah, we don't need we closing the discussion about details now. I was just doing a summary, and this was a detail created in a section, but you can create these enlarged details in plan. In fact, if you want to do like an enlarged plan of a closet or a restroom, you can do this with me if you want. Go to level 1 of the floor plan, and then go to the View tab and create a callout. And callouts we'll transfer the three-dimensional geometry into a new view that will be like enlarged restroom plan. Go to the view call out, for example, and then make sure in the drop-down list of the property window, you have the detail view, and create an enlarged plan of the restrooms. And to open it, you just double click the bubble symbol, and this will take you to the floor plan. Now, this doesn't look too technical. It does have the color scheme associated there. Notice how when you scroll down in the properties of the view, it has the it inherit all the properties from the parent view, but you can override that. Like right now, the color scheme says name. You can just change, again, just scroll down the properties and change this to none. And that will get rid of the color scheme for this view. And that's it. And then you can add tabs, add new tags, add new text, add dimensions, your notes, etc. We have not placed the restroom fixtures here, but this will be like an enlarged plan where you have a greater degree of detail. And so that detail, that new detail, it's shown under the detail views. Notice it says on my model, it says detail 0. Maybe it has detail 1 on your end, but you can rename and say enlarge detail view, detail, enlarge plan detail, restroom. And so forth. Details, a very important part of what we do on documentation, and it's very important part of understanding how Revit works. Any question about details? Okay, so I'm going to save this file, and then you can grab it if you want from the Google Drive, but it doesn't matter. We're going to talk about work sets and work sharing. And this is a fundamental concept because it opens up the model or it enables us to access the model by a large team of contributors. And so I'm not gonna, probably just like the first third of this class, we're just gonna do an exercise together, but then I'm not gonna be able to, we're not gonna be able to work together into a team unless we were connected using the cloud, and that's using BIM Collaborate Pro. I'll show you how project in BIM Collaborate Pro works, and then go from there. So a lot of today's class is just going to be a demo and an explanation. So we're not going to be very hands-on today, but we're going to be high on concepts. So let's talk about work sets and work sharing. All right, you see my presentation? Yeah. All right, the ability to have a group of people working in a single model or in the same file, it's, in my opinion, one of the strengths of Revit Power. It's the backbone of Revit Power. No other BIM software or traditional CAD file software allows you to do this. And those who work in AutoCAD know that whenever you open a CAD file, AutoCAD lock the file and prevent other user from saving that file, you can maybe just open it as a read-only file. But only one person can work in the file. And that's true with Revit 2 at the beginning of the project. When you start a file and when you start a project, everything we've done so far is to create a residential house that is accessed only by one person, you, the author of this person. And if you are a small practitioner, maybe you don't need to use work sharing. And it's okay to have only one person edit the file. But the ability to have multiple people access the file, it's a very big advantage. And so when a project is enabled with work sets, the idea behind it is that the model is broken down in workable areas. And each of these workable areas is called a work set. So think of a work set as pieces of the model that can be individually accessed or individually loaded into your workstation. A work set, it's directly related to how you broke down the how do you assign tasks and responsibility to the working members of a team. So most of all the features associated with work sets are under the Collaborate tab. And you're going to have three big panels. One that is called work sets, another that is called synchronize, and another that is coordinate. We're just going to talk about the work sets and synchronize model. The coordinate, it's something we're going to talk in an advanced topic. And stay tuned for an announcement of an advanced class coming up in January. I think we got a request from you guys to get one started. And if interested, just tap Lana, the administrator. So this panel is very important, the one that says work sets. And I think my screenshot is a little bit old because I think now if you click on the work sets dialog box, there's another button that says collaborate instead of work set. All right, so in a nutshell, the work sharing start as follows. Someone starts the project. It could be team member, it could be the project manager or the design manager. This person start a new project using the out of the box, using your template, and set the basic features of a model. The basic features of a model is, where is the model located? What is the insertion point? What is the appropriate shared coordinate system? And what is ground level elevation? And we all know how to do this. Remember, we did this in the previous classes. Where are the main levels and what are the main grids? And what is the footprint of the building? And when you take that model to a certain level where it needs to be shared, then you enable work sharing. And if I see here, if I jump into my file and go to the Collaborate tab, notice that I have a tool called Collaborate and another one called Work Sets. And you can do this with me. You can just click the Collaborate button here to get started a new central file. And I'm going to stop here. So when you start a new project, you have to decide whether you want to collaborate in your local LAN network and save the file in a central location that is accessible by everyone in the same office, or if you want to use the cloud services provided by Autodesk. It's called BIM Collaborate, BIM Collaborate Pro, that allow you to save the file in one of Autodesk's Amazon servers and make it available to a group of people. And so after you enable collaborate and work sets and work sharing, you decide where it goes. So I'm going to save this in my local network. So I'm going to assume that I have a server here at my home, and you can assume the same. And then you hit OK. So then you are presented with the work sets dialog box. And notice there's a lot of activity happening. Like Revit is like modifying the internal properties of the model. And then the next step after enabling the local work sharing is to enable the work sets. So here where it says collaborate tab work sets, hit that dialog box. Collaborate tab work sets. And you're presented with the work sets dialog box. So a work set, it's equivalent, it's a way to subdivide the model in workable pieces. So imagine that all these pieces are geometries that you put in different containers or in different folders. So each of the work sets contain geometries that are associated with the way the model is structured or the way you deliver the project. By default, Revit creates two buckets of information. The grids and level are placed in this big container. And then everything else that is in the model, the shell, the walls, everything else, it's placed into a generic name work set that is called work set 1. Those are the default work sets. And that's what you see in this dialog box, in the Revit dialog box. The default work set is share levels and grids. So every level in the project and every grid in the project is going to be transferred to this work set. And everything else, the rest of the geometry, will go into this big container called work set 1. And so this dialog box has a lot of other information that to understand. I think that one of the most, these two properties here, we must understand. One is who is the owner of work sets and who is a borrower of a work set. So the file then, we're going to talk about that. We're going to save it in a minute. But notice that when you save the file, we have to save it. It needs to be made clear to everyone that the file we save on the network location is a central file. And so industry standard is that you save the file with a prefix or a suffix with the word central in brackets or in big bold letters. There's got to be no doubt what the central file is in the network location. All right, so when we are in the work set dialog box in Revit here, then notice that there's some people is the owner and some people is a borrower. The person who created a work set is the owner of a work set. And the owner means that only that person in the entire team, if your name is in this column that says owner, that means that you're the only person that can access the model. So an owner means it's a single editor of geometry. And then when you are a borrower means just grabbing a piece of information, grabbing a piece of grabbing a view or jumping into a piece of geometry. But this is a borrower doesn't own the entire work sets, but it's just it's an editor of some elements of the work set. So it's an editor of some elements of a work set. So a work set can have multiple borrowers, and that's typical. That's the most frequently used scenario. That means a person's grab a door or grab a wall or grab a ceiling, and the minute he or she grab that piece of information, he becomes a borrower of that work set, but he doesn't own the entire work set. But when we are creating work sets, Revit is telling you that when you create new work sets, you are the owner of that work set. The borrowers will come when you share this file and everybody start working, then your name will be listed in the borrowers column. The other thing is that you will be identified in the network according to your login profile. So the name that it's populated under these two columns is going to be exactly the same as your login profile. And this is important because some people have generic names that no one understands, like, user 1, user 2, and that's not a good practice. I think your login name should be your first and last name, or like first letter and last name, so that your teammates know who you are and what you're doing. Open this column that says open, allow you to load or unload that work set in your active session. So this is equivalent of load and unload. If it said yes, the content of that work set will be available in the project. If you say no, the content of that work set will be unloaded. And this is a big thing because Revit projects can be really big in size, but maybe the scope of work that you're asked to do in the model, it's very narrow, and you don't have to look at the rest of the geometry. I'll give you an example. If you're asked to do furniture layouts, maybe you don't need the plumbing link. It has no relevance in the type of things you're doing. And so you should unload the link associated with the plumbing trade, and that is going to make your work go faster because there's less memory that needs to be refreshed. So you can selectively turn off work sets. You can also reload them later by switching this column to yes. And then the next column, the one that says yeah, visible in all views, if this is checked, that means the content of that work set is going to be visible across all the views in the entire model. All right, so why work sets? Why is it important? What's the importance of work sets? And I'll tell you what. So work sets, the idea is that you can selectively load only the portions relevant to your work. So work sets are not here to replace categories. They are not here to create layers like you do in AutoCAD. In AutoCAD, everything is a layer, right? Every single wall, everything is categorized by layers. But we already have that in the categories in the visibility graphic overrides, in those checkboxes. Revit already register and classify all that information by categories. But a work set are large portion of a model that can be selectively loaded or unloaded according to the task you're asked to do in the model. And so it's all about performance. Has nothing to do about classifying elements by type, or it has nothing to do about controlling visibility. In fact, you should not use worksets as a way to control visibility. But it's all about enhancing your experience of working with teams with a reduced number of loadable items. So that's why. All right, and so you only create the worksets that you need. You don't have to overload your project with a lot of different worksets. And so one way, and there isn't really a cut rule, a consistent rule on how worksets needs to be created. And a lot has to do on the scope of the work, how big the work is, how many people is going to be working on it. If, for example, the project is only edited by 2 persons, maybe you don't need worksets. You just need the ability to work in the model at the same time, but having just the workset 1 and the selected grids and level is okay. If the project is small enough and the team is small enough, you don't need more than 2 worksets. Now, if the team is big or you have different scope of work that are clearly separated and differentiated, then you can start creating worksets. For example, if you have a team of interior design working in furniture, maybe interiors and furniture is 1 layer. If you have a team who's working in the exterior core and shell, and another one working in the interior layouts, then you have an interior workset, which is going to be used primarily by the interiors team. And then you have a shell and core one that is going to be primarily used by a shell and core team. If your project is big enough that it needs to be broken down in different sectors, maybe you organize your model by the north wing or the south wing or east or west, or if it's a multi-story building, maybe you have groups of levels in the same model. But the key thing here is that what you want to do is that limit the size of the model to a maximum of 500 megabytes. That is my recommendation. This sometimes doesn't happen. Sometimes there are models that are 600 or 700. I work in airport projects where the file size is like 1.2 gigabytes. It's ridiculous. It takes almost 45 minutes just to open the file. And so careful planning of work sets, it's really gonna help a project succeed in how good the experience of the performance is. And so, and this boils down, on the complexity of the model that I was talking about and the size of the model, the size of the team. Only create the work sets that are assigned to very specific scope of work, and then do not create unnecessary work sets. All right, so if I go back to my Revit model, I'm going to create additional work sets here. So I'm going to create a new work set. To create new work sets, you just hit the word new, and I'm going to create another one called exterior, and this is going to have all the exterior work. And then I'm going to have another one that is called furniture. Because the furniture, you know, serve very specific furniture, very specific plan types. And you might not need to display the furniture like in your construction documentation or in your details. And therefore, it's to your advantage to unload the furniture when you don't need it. And this is a very small project. The Mila house is a very small project. So I would think with 4 work sets, we are fine. But if this was a multidisciplinary project where you have a plumbing, a structural, and architectural model, then I would create a work set per discipline. And here is a tip. Create a dedicated work set for every discipline link. So this will allow you to selectively unload it when you don't need it. So if you're working with an electrical engineer or an MEP engineer and structural model, and they are all cross-linked, then each of these disciplines should have its own work set. And I'm in the Mila house, I don't have a dedicated like plumbing model, but if let's assume if I had a consultant working with me and that person in that trade is creating his own model, you create work sets for them. And so I'm going to create one, and this is just imaginary that there's a plumbing model. So I'm going to call this X for a link, or some people call it like a link dash plumbing. And then when we load and link the plumbing model, you can place it into that work set. And if you don't need it, you unload it. And another one that's a good one is everything that is CAD. Like if you link a CAD file or a PDF file that you use as a background in a floor plan just to trace your first initial concepts, then it's a good idea to have one for CAD. And so I'm going to create another one, and this was going to be link dash CAD. And so all my CAD links will be placed there. And when I don't need them, I can unload them.
Cesar, could you explain the difference between loaded and unloaded?
Loaded means that Revit is going to dedicate resources to process the visibility of link or geometry in the view. For example, if I have a plumbing file that is linked into my model, I can selectively unload it, and what that means is ask Revit not to process the representation of that model in your current session and disable this visibility. So you won't see it while you're working on it. Does that make sense? And the same is with the CAD files. And
so loaded is it's visible and unloaded it's not visible.
No, because it could be loaded and visible. You see this checkbox here? It says visible.
Okay.
So for example, if I say this to no, this automatically make it invisible. You won't be able to see anything about this model. But if it's loaded, you can choose to make it visible in some views or not in every view. But the key, so this column here where it says open, this is all about making loadable or not. Loadable or not loadable.
Okay.
And this column here is just about the visibility of that work set. You want it to be visible or not. So an equivalent is if you have an AutoCAD file and then you link an external reference. In AutoCAD, you can unload the link, right? And when you unload the link disappears from the view, but you can reload it again anytime. You're not detaching it. Detach means that you're removing it completely from the project. But an XREF can be unloaded just for performance reasons, like the survey. You can unload the survey while you're doing your work, and then you can reload it again at a different point of time to make it part of the model again. Does that answer my question, Cesar?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so this column that says open can be controlled via this drop-down list. You can also use this close button, which is exactly the same thing. Close means changing this column to no. Two ways of doing the same thing. All right, so this, as I am creating this model, and as I'm creating new work sets, my name appears in the column that says owner, because I am the creator of this container. I am the owner, so no one can work in this work sets when somebody is the owner. So when I select a row, one of these rows, and changes to non-editable, and this is a little misnomer. Right now it says I need to save it and I haven't saved it yet. But non-editable, switch the owner to nothing. Meaning that now you can, the rest of the team can access it. So that's this this first column that is here is related to these two checkboxes. So again, and this is a little misnomer, because if the editable column say yes, that means that someone owns it. And if it says no, it means that it's open for grab. Somebody can come and get it. But I don't know why they choose the word editable. But that's what it means. And notice that by default, when you create a work set, you become the owner. Oops. That happens when you click cancel. Let me create again the work set. So I say I was going to create an exterior. Furniture. And link plumbing, link CAD. And if you are in landscape, that's a very specific piece of geometry of a model. So I would create something called landscape or site, and everything like the topo surface and everything goes there. So notice how I am creating just large chunks of geometry container, large chunks of geometry container. I'm not creating detail specific classification. That's a big no. Like the most number of words you should have, it's somewhere around 10. And if your team is small or you have a small practice and only 2-3 people are going to be using it, there's no point of creating more than three work sets. Again, like I mentioned earlier, the number of work sets depends on the project complexity, the number of people, the tasks that they're assigned to, the delivery types, and all of this needs to be documented in the project execution plan, the document that we prepare before the start of a project and that everybody needs to follow. All right, after you finish creating the work sets, just hit OK. Revit is going to ask you which is going to be your active work sets. And by default, the last work set you created is the active work set. So I'm going to hit yes here. And two things happen in the user interface. You can see here that this part of the user interface used to be grayed out before. Now it's active. Now, this drop-down list display the list of the active work sets. And moving forward, this is another good practice. Just like you do with AutoCAD. Mine the right work set. You can just start working in the same work set. Moving forward, you need to watch where you place the geometry. Because if something it's important here is to make sure that the work sets get unloaded when they are not needed. And if the things are not in the right work sets, you're going to be missing pieces of information that are relevant for your work. And so moving forward, make sure that the right work set is enabled. And there are two places where you see the active work sets. You can see it in the collaborate button in this drop-down list. And you can also see it now here, right below. This is place number 1. This is place number 2. This one is permanent. You always see what is the active work set. Just like CAD, working in the, make sure that everything you place is in the right work set. If we're not careful about this, then the model becomes disarray and hard to control. One of the tasks that BIM managers do, or the project BIM coordinators do in a team, is to periodically audit the work set assignation of projects, and that's a task I used to do a lot for my users. And it's it's something that I shouldn't be doing. I mean, maybe just double checking, but I think everybody should own the ability to play things in the right work set. All right, so any question here? All right, so this is the list of work sets. This is how, once the file is saved, after this operation, then the local user have the ability to create a local file. So remember, we are creating the central file at this point. Once the project is separated in different work sets, and you assign geometry to all the different work sets, then the local users, your teammates, can start creating local files. And a local file, it's a mirror image of the central file in your workstation. It's equivalent to copy the central file and paste it in your workstation. The difference is that Revit does it for you. So a user has the ability to check out an entire work set as an owner. Remember that column that I was showing you that says editable or not editable, that yes, no. If a user select yes, then that person becomes the owner of an entire work set, and only that user can work in that work set. And that's a little selfish, right? When somebody owns a work set, the rest is just contemplating how that work set is owned, and they have no share to the work sets. And what we want instead is for the users to have access to everything and just work in the things that are relevant to his tasks. And so a borrower, it's someone who just checked specific pieces of geometry inside a workset. And so worksets can have multiple borrowers. And this second element, this second way of working is the most frequently used, the most frequent way of working in Revit. The first one, being an owner, it's a selfish way of working. It's sometimes used by the BIM manager when you want to prevent someone from making any change on a specific type of geometry. But for those conditions, we already can lock, we can pin elements to prevent others from using it. But checking out a workset, I don't recommend it as an owner. All right, here are two users. The user A, I'm going to call her Amanda. Amanda can check out pieces, check out the entire workset as an owner, and only she can work on that workset. And then let's call this Tim. Tim can check out just pieces of geometry inside of the furniture element. Amanda can continue working in pieces of geometry in the worksets, furniture workset, but Tim cannot work in Amanda's work because she owns the entire workset. Does that make sense? All right. And so each user does what they need to do. They aggregate contributions to the model. They add to the model what they're asked to do, either details or more information about furniture, doors, wall, etc. And from time to time, you have to save that work and share it with your teammates. And so there are two concepts here. Save a file will save your changes to the local file. So this in here is save. When you hit the save button, all you're doing is saving the file to your local workstation. And then the other verb here is the synchronize with central. And synchronize with central, it's a two-way road. You socialize your changes to the rest of the team into the central file, and then you download the contribution of other users into your local file. Does that make sense? So synchronize and saving is not the same thing. Saving just makes sure that if your file crashes, at least you have something to retrieve from at the local level. But synchronize with central, it's a way to retrieve the changes that others have done to the file and upload the changes that you've done to the model. And you should do this frequently. Revit is not going to do this for you. Revit does not save or synchronize automatically. You have to do this. All right. So any question? Is this clear? Okay, so from time to time, a user may want to access what another user is at. For example, if team need access an element that is owned by Amanda, when he grabs that information, Revit is gonna display a warning that he cannot access that piece of information because it's owned by another user. And one of the options in that warning dialog box is to send an edit request. An edit request is a message notification to another person that you want to have access to a piece of geometry that he owns or that he or she borrows. And an editor request will appear as a warning that is going to pop up in your screen. And that's a visual way to know that somebody wants to work in what you're working on. And so to There are two responses to that warning. You can grant access to a user to access that geometry that you own, or you can deny it. If you deny it, any of these two responses is going to be displayed as a response to the edit request. If you deny it, that means that you're still working on that. You don't want to socialize yet. But if you grant it, that's nice of you, right? And so the way to socialize these changes is to synchronize with Central. When you synchronize with Central, one of the options in the synchronization is to relinquish ownership. And that's this button here. Relinquish all mine. It's like returning the folder back to the file deck. You relinquish your ownership of the workspace that you own or the geometries that you borrow, and you allow other people to access those pieces of information. And then there's another variation that is called reload latest, and that's a one-way road. That's just this part of the synchronization. Reload latest, download everything that others have contributed to the central file, but you're not at a point that you want to share your work. And so it's a way to see the updates that others have done to the model, but you don't socialize your changes. Does that make sense? It's not frequently used, but sometimes, there may be a reason why you don't want to share, but you want to see what the rest is done. Okay, so, and I'm jumping to Revit in a second. At the end of the day, these users save to local, and then synchronize with Central. And when everybody leaves the office, the Central file has the greatest and latest information that everyone had, everyone contributed throughout the day. Never leave, and I should write this down. Never leave a local file unattended, open more than 3 or 4 hours. Just remember, when your local file is open, Revit act it's continually acting as a traffic controller. And so if you leave your local file idle, there's a lot of activity that's happening with the rest of the team. And your file, it's slowly becoming older and older and older. If you stop working, let's say at 1 in the afternoon, and then the rest of the team continue working on the model for 4 or 5 more hours, your model is going to slowly become older and older and older. And so the more information, the more delta information the central file needs to transfer to your local workstation, the more time it takes to synchronize. And sometimes when the system oversaturates, it displays error messages, in particular when there are other activities, like if your company has window updates that happens overnight, and those Windows updates impact your local workstation and restart it automatically, the file gets switched off without warning. And then you have a local file that was never saved or synchronized. And the next day when you open that file, because it was automatically closed by Windows system at midnight, then you lost all that work. And so if you're going to leave your desk for more than 3 hours, just close the local file, synchronize with central, and let the rest of the team have the latest and greatest information. All right, let's go back to my Revit file. I created the work sets. When I check the work sets dialog box, I still own all the work sets because I was creating it. And so the first thing I need to do is to save this file, and I'm going to save it as a central file. So go to the files and then hit save as a project. And you present it with this dialog box. And I'm going to move it away from the Google Drive. I'm going to place it on my working folder, and you should do the same. Try to place it in a different location. And then pointer number 1, always save the central file with the word central. So I put a suffix here with the big bold letters in capital that says central. All right. And pointer number 2, this one is a good one, options. Check this option button before you save it. It has very important information. The first box that says maximum, you see this number. This is the amount of historical sinks that the central file is going to store in the central file location. So what that means is that you can retrieve version of the central file up to 20 versions back in history. This varies. There's no good or right standard. It depends on how much risk you want to, how much you think you may want to return the model in history. In previous firms, this option was 100. But I wouldn't recommend to go above 100, because remember, these are storage containers that are time-stamped. And the more containers you have in a central file, the larger this file is going to become. And so I would say anything between 20 and 100 is a reasonable number. When I work at HOK, the maximum was 80. And this is a one-time operation. Once this file is saved, these options cannot be changed. Notice how these are the default. This make a new central file. It's by default checked. That's a good thing. That means that I'm doing the right thing. I'm creating a central file. And this is another one. This is a very important one. Open workset default. So when users in a work share environment open a local file, the first thing you could give your users the ability to choose which work sets to open. And this option that says last viewed, I hate it. I'm going to write it here. I hate this option. Because last viewed means that whoever sync last, then that's going to become your default work set environment. And so you don't want to work the way your teammate work, or you don't want to work with the loaded or unloaded work sets that your teammate works. That was for his work. That was for his task, not for your task. And so what I advise you guys to do is to choose the very last option here, which says specify. And when specify is going to present the user with the workspace dialog box before the geometry is open, and then you can selectively enable or disable load or unload which workset you want to work on. So this is a good tip. Always set these options to specify. Now the other options here, it's all. That means all the worksets are on. Not a good option. It's going to take a lot of time and it's going to make your experience slow. Editable, that means that checkbox that said editable just now, only the things that have just now will be open. I almost never use this one. Last viewed, I almost never use this. Specify is the one I like. And then the thumbnail preview, it's what happens with the thumbnail when you select the works. This thumbnail, it's the thing that appears here on Windows, the little window. And so you can display a specific view. This is not as important, but you can choose a 3D view as a thumbnail preview. I would use like a 3D view to communicate what this model is about. And then you hit OK. And then I'm going to save this. And this, and gentlemen and ladies, we have a central file. Aveus central file. The central file is created. And I'm going to check the workset dialog box one more time. Notice how my name is still in the owner dialog box. And to make your users ready for this central file, you synchronize with central. And then hit OK. Sync with central, upload the changes, download the changes. Now when I go to the workset dialog box, oh, I'm still an owner. All right, so this is what you need to do. Relinquish all mine. That's gonna return the files to the file cabinet. Let's go back to the worksets. And right now, notice how the editable column, it says no. And there's no name associated with owner. There's no name associated with borrowers. This file is ready to be used by your team. And then just close it. Close it. File close. Save again. I think it's asking you to capture the last changes of the central file, and you can start, your user can start using this central file. Any question here? So this file will live on your server under a folder structure that reflect where the project files are. And now let's talk a little bit about the perspective from the user. So the user, and let me go back here. The users are now ready to create a local file, and they're going to navigate to the location of the central file and select what worksets to work. Two users can work in the same worksets. They can be borrowers, but I really don't recommend to become an owner. So let's look at some of the options in Revit that are important regarding work sharing. And here I'm going to I'm going to open the options in Revit. So where are the options? Yeah. So I am clicking this, the second button from the top, the home button, which takes me back to the user interface. Go back to this user interface, the display of the entire ribbon. And then under the home tab, rule. Under the Home tab, go to the File, and then hit the Options button. File tab, Options. And then there are a few settings that are related to the work sharing. The first one is under the General tab where it says Username. Notice that this is grayed out. And these two things match. This is how Revit identify you inside the work set and experience. And then the other one is and this is very important. If you go to File Location, again, to get to the options, go to I click the Home tab, Home button right here. Then go to File Options. And then under the File Location, this is another important setting. This one here. This is where your local file is going to be located. Where is your local file? Your local file is going to be placed in this folder. And this should be, this is saved in the Revit INI. The Revit INI is a small file that saves all the options of a Revit working environment. And this should be a standard location across the office. Standard. A lot of companies decide that every user should have on their local file a new folder called Revit Local or something around those words. And then this path in every workstation, it's called Revit Local. Then you go and find your local file in that path. So I'm going to open this file location. So I'm going to copy this and open. You don't have to do this. I'm just demonstrating. Inside this folder, I have a Mila house here, or I should have a Mila house. Oh no, I haven't opened a new local file, so I have no local file here right now. All right, so I'm good here. So I'm going to browse a location here to where my local files are. And I'm going to choose the C. No, I'm going to use my D drive. And inside here, I have a folder called Work Sharing, I think. No, I don't have, but I'm going to create it on the fly. New folder. I'm going to call this a local file. All right. So every new user is going to, every user who accesses the central file is going to have a mirror copy of the central file placed into this folder. Okay. So that's a setting I just want to show you because when things go wrong, you ask yourself, and where's my local file? And you go into the options and find where that path is. And you can examine or do some forensics on where your file is placed. All right, let me also show you what happens with the central file. So this central file, it's living on, I think I saved it on my OneDrive. I did it. Oh, no, I saved it on my D drive. That's right. Save Revit. 23. All right, here is the central file. All right, so this is the central file I created 10 minutes ago. And right next to this central file, there's a folder that it's called, has the same name, it has the word backup. And so remember the options that in the options button where I was saving, when it says it can retrieve between 20 to 100 historical backups. Those historical backups are going to start getting placed in this folder. When you open this folder called backup, you're going to see a lot of files with a strange extensions. You have files RWS, that means Revit work sharing, or files with the extension DAT, or files with this log file. And each of these, you see there's a timestamp on each of these. These are the traffic control files that are always active when you enable a new session. So these files should be left alone, never touch them, never delete them, never rename it. The folder that's sitting next to the central file with the suffix backup remains as is and shouldn't be touched. If any of this file is touched, the central file will be disabled. You just leave it there, leave it alone, don't touch it. It's something that is an integral part of the central file traffic control. All right, let's go back. Let's go from the user standpoint and let's open a central file. This is not it. All right, to start a new central file, say the BIM manager created the central file and send you a message that the central file is ready. You have to navigate to the central file location. So you just go and open and navigate to the location of the central file. I put this on my D drive. Revit. Search for the location of the central file. Here's the file with the big bold word central. And notice two things here. When you navigate to the central file, you will be prompted to this checkbox that says create new local. This is the default, and this is fine. This checkbox, if you're a local user and you're trying to create a local file, this checkbox should always be enabled. If you, as a local user, navigate to the central file and this is grayed out, that means A, maybe you're using the wrong version of Revit. Maybe you're using, the file was created in Revit 2022 and you are using Revit 2023, or you are accessing with Revit 2029. The version of Revit is going to tell you whether this local file can be created or not. If this checkbox is grayed out, may also mean that there's no central file created. Maybe it's a local, maybe it's just a file without work sets and work sharing. And if this is grayed out, this means also that there is the way users connect to the drive may not have the same letter path. You know how you access your central file, your server. Sometimes, if some user has this map as D or F or G, and another user has it at H, then there's different path. There's different pathways to access the central file, and that also generates this error that you cannot access the local file. So That's rare, but make sure that this is always enabled. Just visually check that this is enabled, and then hit open. And I love this dialog box. I'm gonna write it here. I love it because that means that the user can selectively choose what worksets to open and what worksets not to open. And this is only possible because when I was saving the central file, I choose the option that says specify. And then you as a user can say, oh, I don't need the plumbing. So I'm going to close it. I don't need the tab, so I'm going to close it. I don't need this site. I'm going to close it. I'm going to work on the exterior, and this is going to be my active work set. And so you can selectively not open or unload the worksets that you don't need. And then you hit OK. And then you're just going to load portion of this model. You're not going to load the entire enchilada. You're just going to load the worksets that are important to you. And then you can start working in a local file. Does that make sense? Now, notice this as well. At the top of the Revit file, you have the name of the file has now your name. This is a local file. It has your login name. So that's a good thing. It's just a reminder that you're working in a local file. And then you have to mind what your active workset is. So if I'm going to be doing things on the exterior workset, let's make the exterior workset my active workset. And then you can start placing things in the exterior. And let's say I'm going to grab this wall and I'm going to move a few inches. I'm just using you can grab something and just move it slightly. As soon as you touch something in the Revit environment, that object is your property. You become the borrower of these objects. And when you look at the properties of these wall, when you scroll down to the bottom, there's a new parameter called edit by, and it has my name here. That means that this is the borrower of that object. And you become the borrower of something when you grab something and make a change to that. And making a change means that making change in the metadata or making changes in the physical location of an object. Also, when I go to the Collaborate tab and open the Workset dialog box, notice how my name is now listed as a borrower because I am borrowing one element that is placed in Workset 1. And that's that piece of information there. And I'm going to see also the rest of my team names under the borrowing team. And you can selectively see who's working on what. All right, so any question here? So one of the visibility options of worksets is this workset visibility control. It's a small little icon that is next to the light bulb. It has like 2 boxes with an X. This is the worksets visibility. And this allows you to apply a workset override based on the workset status. So if you click on this button and you look at the work sharing display settings, these are color overrides that can be applied to your view based on who owns the worksets. If the geometry is old or is new, or some things have disappeared. Or the last one, who owns the works? Display the elements by work sets. And so these are graphic override to display multiple work sharing display settings based on the checkout status, owners, model updates, and the different work sets. So I'm going to go back to this button and show the one that says owners. I don't know if you can see it, but you see this purple thing? That means that I am the owner of that object. If you don't like that color, purple is not my color. You can go back to this worksheet display setting and say, I don't want the purple color, I want the yellow color. And now everything that is yellow under this graphic property override means that I am the borrower of that object. You want to move something. When you select it, you become the borrower of that object. I'm going to select this and move it a few inches to the back. Just by the virtue of changing something, you become the borrower of that object. And notice the color. Now I am the owner of that object. Not of the work set, just of the object. So this is useful if you want to see who's working on what. In this button, the workshop display settings, switch to the different work sets. So work sets will display, will apply, and maybe I switch I'm going to go to level 1. And then on level 1, I'm going to switch the work set visibility to work sets. And notice initially I had 2 work sets, the share level and grids and work set 1. And right now the grids are green because in the display settings, everything that is share levels and grids, it's green color. And then everything purple is work set 1. And this is what you do to start placing things in the right work sets. You select it. I'm going to select this wall here, and you can pick any exterior wall. And then change its work set allocation in the properties of the object on the work set. I'm going to change this to the exterior work set. And then notice the color change. Now it's like orangey. I'm going to select, no, it's like, I don't know, teal. I'm going to select this wall that has a window. Notice how the wall and the window has a purple color. And I'm going to change the color because I don't like that teal color. So work share display for the work set 1, I'm going to make it magenta. So everything that is magenta, it's work set 1. And this is exterior. So I'm going to select this piece of wall and change it to work set, change his work set to the exterior work set. And this drop down list. And notice that the window inside doesn't automatically change work sets. You have to manually select it and then reallocate the work set where it needs to belong. And so this is the way you change work sets, and the visual display, the graphic display of the work sets will allow you to check what is the appropriate work set. And I can continue doing this. You know, I'm just control selecting multiple objects for all the exterior walls. And then you can change it in bulk. I have 10 elements selected on the screen. And in a single operation, I change the work set control to exterior. This is a property of the objects, and then notice how they change color in the view. And visually, you can display which work sets are what objects are assigned to the different work sets. All right, so and yeah, you can continue working on all of this. I'm going to quickly just select the windows using Control key, and then move all those windows to the work set exterior. Now I'm going to do the curtain walls. There are 2 curtain walls here. Change them to the work set exterior. And the storefronts, all the nested elements inherit the parent work set. So if the curtain wall assemble is part of a work set, all the panels inside is and the curtain wall mullions are part of that as well. Okay, I'm missing this window here. Again, I'm going to move this to exterior. You can also, I'm doing this in a floor plan, but you can also do this in a 3D view. If I switch to the 3D view here, I can also enable the work set visibility by work sets. And notice like there are a few windows that I missed and the roof as well. So now I'm going to select the roofs using the Control key. And these clerestory windows that I missed. And again, change its work sets to exterior. And all I'm doing is reallocating geometry to the right work set. Notice the site is magenta, or no, the site, it's in the work set 1. So maybe I want to move this topography to the work set that is called site. Oh, and remember that I unloaded the site. So what I just did is I placed the geometry to an unloaded work set, and that's why it disappeared. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to do it anyway. If I want to reload the work set, you go to the work set dialog box and change the site work set to yes, which is going to open it. And there you go. Here is the site. This is the right work set. I think one is purple and the other is like more magenta like. And so all these trees, for example, you can do right click, select all instances in the project. This is going to select all the trees in the project, and you can assign them to the site work set, etc. The same you can do with the furniture. A quick way to do the furniture is you select everything on the screen, filter, check none, select all the furniture. Oh, I don't have furniture. We'll do that next week. But you can select all the furniture and change it in a single operation. And once everything is associated with work sets, you can disable the work set display off here. And again, if you touch something, you will own it. I'm going to switch to owners here. Everything that is yellow, are things that I've changed. So in the work set dialog box, my name is going to appear as a borrower of work set 1. To return these elements back to the central file, use synchronize with central and relinquish all mine. Notice the change of color. Now return to black and white. That means that it's ready to be used by somebody else. I'm going to switch off the work sharing display, and then you can continue working in a team. And that's how it works. All right, I'm getting close to the end of the class. So synchronize with Central again, and relinquish all mine so that you don't own anything. Let me wrap up the class with just a few recommendations. Okay, never work in the central file. The central file, it's only open to troubleshoot. For example, if the BIM manager needs to do big operations, for example, to split the model in half, or to add a new floor to the building, and so the central file, it's a traffic controller of the work share environment, and no one should work in the central file. How do you open the central file? Let me show you what not to do. I'm going to close this file. If I'm a user and I want to open the central file, if I navigate to the central file and go to the Mila house, and I clear this checkbox. If I clear the create local file, I am going to be open the central file. And maybe I shouldn't tell you this, but working in the central file is not okay, because you are modifying the traffic controller of the work share environment, and this may create traffic signals that are incorrect to the users, or the user can start receiving all these messages that an object is owned by somebody else. You cannot synchronize with central. So I'm going to put it here. Never do this. Unless you're the BIM manager and you know what you're doing. All right, another recommendation, closing this. How many work sets? It's depend on the project size, the size of the team, the experience, and the role. Save, 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 and sync to central. I recommend you to save as frequent as you can and share your work with your teammate. Detach from central when you need to keep an independent file for yourself. And this is I need a copy of this model because I'm going to tender a design option that I don't want to socialize with the rest of the team. Or you detach from central when you're going to send this file to a consultant. And so the way to do this, it's you navigate to the central file and you see this checkbox that says detach from central. This is going to create a new copy of the central file removed from the work share environment. And this will be a standalone file. You cannot rejoin a detached file into the work sharing operation. Create a new local every day. That's another recommendation I have. So this doesn't happen quite often, but maybe 10 years ago, remember that the network used to fail a lot. If the network falls, quit. Just take a coffee, wait for IT to come back and fix it, but don't work when you're not connected on the network. That condition is called work set at risk. And what that means is that because there's no traffic controller, 2 or 3 users can be working in the same object at the same time, and Revit central file doesn't know it. And so when these local files get reconnected to the network, only one of them is going to remain as, or the first one to synchronize with central is going to remain as the traffic control main user, and the other ones are going to display this message that the local file can no longer, is not compatible with the central file. And that happens when you are disconnected from the network. Every link file should have its own work sets. Designate a central file manager. This is usually the BIM manager. And don't go on vacation without relinquishing. In previous version of Revit, you could fake, you could log in as somebody else's easily by just switching the owner name, but that's no longer possible. So if you go on a vacation and you don't relinquish your work, there's nothing your team can do. They have to recreate the central file to remove all the assignments, and that's not a good thing to recreate a new central file. Or you should receive a call at your nice vacation asking for your login and password so that some person can relinquish your objects. If some objects remain not relinquished, then the users are going to keep receiving this message. This person is owning this work set, in this geometry in this work set, and you cannot synchronize with central until that person synchronizes with central. And you're not around to synchronize. That's a big deal. All right, it's 7:15. I'm past my time. Any question here? Next class, we're going to talk about design options and phasing. We're going to continue with Mila. We're going to create some furniture arrangements using design options. And we're not going to use this central file, but I'm going to post a new file before the start of the class on Wednesday. So, okay. I think I'm finished here. I'm going to talk a little bit about BIM Collaborate Pro, how to synchronize on the cloud next class before the start of the design options. And then, yeah, I'll see you guys on Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye. Have a good one. And I'm going to stop.